Hello there, this is Mr. Kilimanjaro, and I thought I'd do a kind of walkthrough tutorial for the interface for Europa Universalis 4. As you can see, El Dorado, the 5th expansion pack, came out yesterday. I don't have the money to get it right now, though. I'm quite looking forward to it. From what I've read, it's going to be really interesting, and I like the idea of like having kind of a custom nations maker in it. But let me just say a little bit about why I'm doing this. I introduced a couple of friends to Europa Universalis for not so long ago, and I had to kind of sit down with them for a while and go over the whole interface. So I've had some practice explaining it now, and I'm hoping it'll be kind of a bit quick and hopefully informative. I'm by no means an expert in the game. I really enjoy playing it, and I've been playing it for a little bit now. But I'm hoping that I can pass on some of that knowledge, because I remember the first few times I played, the interface just made no sense, and a lot of the features, because Paradox rely on the community to create content to explain it, and not necessarily to kind of explain it all in the tutorials you get. You have to kind of watch other people play to get a hang of it. So I'm not going to be really doing much playing. I'm just going to be explaining all of the various things that are happening. So why don't we give this a shot? So first things first, single player, then immediately you get the kind of the political map of Europe. Although you can obviously go wider, and there are a huge amount of other nations to play as in the entire world. But I mean, we're not really going to be playing, like I said, so we'll pick Castile for this one. Start date 1444. We'll hit play, initializing the game. So when you come in, there's going to be a series of things you have to do first, but the game's going to be paused, so before we even do anything, and I'll explain the kind of the first moves, I guess, dealing with the little notifications, but really I'm just going to kind of talk through, like I said, all of this interface around here to make sense of it. So the game is paused, as you can see, 11th of November. You can see the map in front of you. The map is kind of, in a way similar to any maps that you'd see in kind of Total War, stuff like that. When you lift up a bit, the fog of war reveals to see what's all around you, but as you zoom in, then you get real-time kind of fog of war, things that you have no awareness of because they're outside your influence range. Right, so we're going to be explaining from top to bottom, left to right, kind of fairly simple. So we're going to go along here, and we'll deal with this, and then we'll come to dealing with this stuff over here. So first things first, very top left. I guess this is kind of the most topmost leftist thing. So we'll start with the production interface because it's fairly simple. You click this, your map grays out because it will light up depending upon where you can build certain units. So this is the unit tab, the land unit tab, and you have right now, excuse me, the option between Latin medieval infantry and Latin knights. Sometimes I've seen some of my friends get confused between clicking this and clicking this. Mercenaries are there just to kind of reinforce when you don't have enough manpower left to actually reinforce your army, but you kind of need a quick boost of troops. What that means, manpower, and all that stuff, we'll come back to explaining. But in general, mercenaries are very expensive, so don't hire them unless you have to. Stick more with these kinds of units. So we have Latin medieval infantry, which, as you can see, can be built anywhere in the green highlighted zone, which are all the territories you own. They'll cost 10 gold over here to hire. They'll take 64 days to make. It changes how long they'll take to be made, depending upon the manpower in the province, and depending upon whether you have a barracks and other stuff like that, which influences recruitment time. You can see we have three rows of potential pips. We have the fire pip, which doesn't get used until a bit later because it's a more advanced kind of attack form of counting the attacking power of the unit. We have the shock, which Latin medieval infantry don't have, but Latin knights do. And then you have the morale. Now the difference between the orange and the green pip is the difference between offensive and defensive morale. So if you're attacking, then you use offensive morale. If you're defending, you use defensive morale. That's kind of all it is, and you can kind of count pips as to how things are going to be effective or not. They introduced in the last expansion pack, in expansion pack 4, which I can't remember the name of right now, the ability to create army templates. So if you enter here, you could enter any kind of name. Say I enter Spanish army, and I could say that a traditional or the kind of usual Spanish army I'm going to want is going to have, say, 8 units of infantry, 2 units of cavalry. And I'm going to say that it will only be made in one province. If I want, I can make it in as many provinces as I want, up to the maximum number of units. Obviously, if you just make it all in one province, it'll take a while, because it's going to have to go through one at a time. If you make it over 10, then it'll take much less time. So making it over the most provinces usually makes the most sense. It'll cost 130 gold total to complete. It costs 10,000 manpower, because each one of these costs 1,000. And it'll take about 89 days. As you can see, the more down we go, the longer it's going to take. So we can save this, and this is now a Spanish army template. To use it, we'd click on it. And I think we just click anywhere on the map. And you can see it's spread out the costs all over the show. We're going to delete these, though, because we're not interested in making a massive army right now. In general, kind of like fairly obviously, the more units you have, the more cost they have, so you need to make sure that you're making enough money to support them, which you normally are as Castile, because you have a gold mine in Toledo, and you generally make pretty good money for it fairly early on, but something to keep an eye on. You can't have more troops than you can support. Also, it says at the bottom here, army force limit. So I currently have 23 troops, of which I can only have another 7 before I reach the limit of what my country can support. After that, you pay extra for troops. So you generally want to stick within your force limit. And then right at the bottom of the page, we have the in production, which tells you how many things are in production. Fairly self-explanatory. All of this then applies to most of the other things down, well, specifically to naval units. Naval units are different because if you click on them, you can see you can only build them in coastal territories, obviously, because they go in the water. We have 4 different kinds of naval units. We have cogs, which have no offensive capability. Well, they have 4, but that's really not much. And they are used only to transport units from territory to territory. We have galleys, which are specifically inland-based units. So you wouldn't be sailing them out into the Atlantic. They would take huge. It's called what is it called? When they go out into the sea. I'll remember it. They'll take huge attrition. Sorry, that's the word. They'll take huge attrition because obviously they're kind of using oars and very basic sails, so they're just not going to do well out in the open ocean. But inland, in the Mediterranean, say, or in the Black Sea, or in the Baltic Sea, they will do very fine. They actually perform, it says, 100% bonus to damage to non-galley units inside of inland seas, which is obviously a really good bonus. So there's something good. There's something good to have for just those kind of inland seas. Barks are the only units that have any kind of trade influence. They're light ships, so you build them. You can use them for wars, but generally you want to have them kind of sailing around trade nodes. So if we leap a bit forward now, hit the trade node map. Right now you can see the paths of trade between the various nodes. So the local node to all of Castile, basically, aside from Cuenca, which is part of Genoa, is Sevilla. So Sevilla is one of the best nodes in the game, actually, because it has a lot coming into it and very little going out. So you can use barks, to go to nodes like Genoa, to Tunis, to Safi, to the there are nodes out there, Atlantic nodes that we haven't discovered yet, and to influence them to send more money to Sevilla, where you can take a cut of the profits because you have a huge amount of trade power there. I mean, you can see Portugal and parts of Morocco have influence there too, but you have by far kind of the most, with the most kind of territories. So that's what they're used for. And then early Carracks are kind of like the big heavy hitters of the game. They have a huge amount of firepower, 4 times as much as a bark. They're quite slow as cogs, and they have 20 health to them, which is, as you can see, again, the most amount of health. They also are very, very expensive. They cost almost 0.5 of a gold per month, which is a lot, so you can't necessarily support that many, but certainly worth having around, because because they are heavy hitters. As time goes on, these will get improved, as will the land units, but that's kind of a later game thing that we can talk about later. Again, you can create a navy template in the same way you could create a army template and have it built in much the same way. And then you have the naval force limit, much as you have the army force limit, and in production at the bottom. Right, now we have buildings. Now, initially, you don't have access to many buildings because they have to be researched. They come from technology, which we'll see as part of the shield, which we'll come to at some point. But luckily, we have the opportunity to build one Earth rampart, and I reckon, yeah, it's going to be in the Canarias. So, whenever you have the option to build a building, if you hover over it, it'll tell you its effects. So the rampart gives you plus 0.1% local missionary strength, plus 0.5 supply limit, which is good because it would mean that you suffer less casualties within it, and a fort level plus 1, which means that it's harder to besiege the territory and win. Underneath, it tells you it costs 50 gold, 10 military power, and it'll take 12 months to build. Now, the powers are over here. These are kind of abstract representations of the various forms of power you could wield within your empire. And so you have to expend 10 military power in order to build a military building, much in the same way that you have to expend 10 military power to build an armory, the other kind of military building you can build. Temples and constables use administrative power, and docks and marketplaces use diplomatic power. So those are the kind of 3 streams of buildings that you have. And they use up incrementally more as you get later on, and unique buildings all use the same amount of power generally, but quite a lot of money. Same thing with manufactories, but those are more advanced buildings we'll get to later. But to build anything, you click on it. Again, provinces where you can't build are grayed out in purple. Provinces where you can are in green. You hover over, you will see the little hammer appear, click, and there we go. So it's been told to build, it'll take 12 months, and then we'll have an Earth rampart in the Canarias. Fairly simple, that's kind of all there is to buildings. Just to bear in mind that you need the powers to build them, obviously. Coring is quite an important part of the game. I can't show you it now because we have no non-core provinces, but whenever you take a province, regardless of whether you have a claim to it or not, you will be required to core that province, unless you've lost a province and are taking it back and you already have a core there. Coring means that it's considered part of your hegemony, part of your country, and if you don't have a core there, it incurs huge kind of tax deficiencies and manpower and all kind. It's bad. You want to core your countries. One thing you do need to know is that if you don't have a prior claim to a country that you take, then the coring is going to be much more expensive. Coring always takes up administrative power, so you need to have quite a lot of it before you kind of go into a war and think that you're going to need to be coring stuff afterwards. And this is one of the ways to check that you have all your cores made. It'll come up here if you don't, and coring leads to this thing called overextension, which if it gets high enough can lead to stuff like rebellion. So you always need to make sure that you've cored everything that you can core. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. We also have missionaries. Missionaries are over here. We have 2 available of the 2 total missionaries. Spanish get an extra 1 because they're Spanish, but most people only start with the 1. If ever you own territory that isn't your religion, you have the option to convert it, as long as there aren't other reasons why you can't. So missionary strength is always tallied against the kind of local belief, and if the local belief incurs sufficient damage to the missionary strength, then you won't be able to convert it. Or if it incurs like so much that you only have like 0.01% more than is required to convert, then it will take something like 1,666 months, which is an incredibly long time to convert a place, given that you're paying gold every month to do so. So if you ever need to convert places, you need to work towards making your missionary strength high enough that they can actually successfully convert these places. So one of the common first moves of Spain is to take Granada, because it is the last vestige of the Islamic Empire left in Spain. So you take Jabal Tariq, Granada, and Maria. And these are obviously, if we leave this tab for a second, if you click on the country, whenever you click on a country, it brings up all the details about the country, and the religion here is Sunni. Obviously Spain is Catholic. Sunni is one of these religions that, as you can see, degrades local missionary strength by -2. So as Spain, it's going to be a while before you can get your missionary strength back up enough to be able to convert Granada, but obviously doing so is great, because having different religions in your empire leads to kind of increased tension, can lead to rebels, can certainly lead to increased kind of to increasing the deficiency of local taxing, stuff like that. So you want everything to be a homogenous religion if you can afford to, but obviously it'll be difficult to convert Sunniism because it's quite a hard religion to root out, as it were. So that's what the missionaries do. There's local autonomy, which was added in the previous, I think, in expansion 4. The idea here is that some places have some degree of local autonomy. Increasing local autonomy is a good way of decreasing unrest in the short term, but having increased local autonomy can lead to things like secession. So in colonies that you have, they always stable at about 50% local autonomy, and the higher they go, the more likely it is that they'll just leave your empire and strike out on their own, as it were. And I think also can lead to increased sorry, let's just have a look-see. Yeah, so the fact that they have a certain amount of local autonomy increases things like shipbuilding and recruitment time and decreases the amount of trade power and tax you get from them, I think. Well, let's check with something that has 0 local autonomy. Yeah, so that has no negative effect. So local autonomy is something you want to avoid if you can help it, as kind of like, you know, the reigning emperor of the empire of the country, but it might be a necessary evil to decrease unrest in the short term sometimes. Excuse me, and this is a way to check up on that through this kind of little tab here. And then lastly we have the culture. There's normally a primary cultural group to the country you are, so I think it's Spanish for us. Castilian is the code. Yeah. Okay, it's just telling us that. Either way, there are a bunch of different cultures, and cultures have different cultural groups. So, for instance, Aragonese is sort of the same culture group. Yeah, sorry, there we go. Iberian as Castile. However, say Burgundian culture is not of the same group, because it's more French, Holland kind of group. Portugal will be of the same kind of group as Iberian, because this is the Iberian Peninsula after all. So certain cultures here, even though they're not Castilian, even though we are Castile, for instance, Lyonese, because Lyon has its own kind of separate culture to the rest of Spain here, it's fine as long as they're accepted. It doesn't really invoke any kind of difficulty. If a culture is not accepted, for instance, Basque, because it's the same cultural group, doesn't have huge negative effects if we hold it, but because it's not necessarily an accepted culture in Castile, will lead to 15% less local taxes and 15% less local manpower contributed to your manpower whole. Similarly with Aragonese, I imagine. Aragonese culture, because it's not accepted in Castile, even though it's of the same group, will have slight negative effects. A culture that's not even of the same group, though, say Aquitaine, would have, you can see, even more negative effects because it's not even of the same group. So it's worth sticking within your same group initially, although obviously further abroad it becomes worth it to perhaps change cultures, or there's a kind of a point at which if you own enough of a certain kind of culture, so if I had enough provinces, say these 4 provinces, of the Aquitaine culture, then it might become that it becomes suddenly accepted in my cultural group because we have enough of those kind of people within our borders. Sometimes this is quite high, sometimes it's not. It kind of just depends upon how the game determines that kind of count. But that's and changing culture is a way to affect kind of negative cultural effects abroad. If you ever need to, by just changing them to your culture. But it takes a certain amount of time, and it takes administrative power, certainly. Diplomatic power. It takes 100 diplomatic power. And requires you to send a diplomat there for the duration of the 96, 72, or 120 months, as it might be, which is obviously quite a long time to lose a diplomat. So that's it for the production interface. Let's move speedily on to the big shield. The big shield is kind of your go-to tab for most kind of information that you need. So it has all these little sub-tabs under it. First tab is government. So it tells us that we are a feudal monarchy. Feudal monarchies grant 10% national manpower and 25% income from vassals. Vassals are nations that you haven't annexed, so they're not formally a part of you, but they are kind of subservient to you, so they pay you a certain amount of money and manpower every month in return for you kind of being their lord. You call them suzerain lord. Our current king is King Juan II de Trastamara, and he has 1 administrative skill, 1 diplomatic skill, and 2 military skill. So he is a goddamn awful king, because these can go up to about 6. And they contribute directly to the various powers that we have. So a king with more is going to be able to do more because he has more. Sorry, a king with more skills is going to be able to do more things because he's going to contribute more to the abstract realms of power that he currently holds. You also have an heir. If you don't have an heir, then your country could be taken over by any kind of family to which you have a married lineage. So it's good to have an heir, and a strong heir at that, so someone who hasn't got a weak claim, who will likely lead to kind of civil war when they take over. It tells us our primary culture is Castilian, but we also accept Andalusian and Leonese, and we currently have no country modifiers. Country modifiers are just things that affect how the country is running. They come from random events, or you could even choose some when you get the options. And over here is where we have the counts of the various powers we have. So we get +3 monthly because we have a base value of 3. And because we have applied a national focus, which is something you can apply once every 25 years to a certain kind of power group, if you want to focus on that power for the next 25 years, it detracts 1 from each of the other ones and applies 2, so the ones that detracted, to the particular one that you've chosen. So everything's base value is always 3. If you have, say, more diplomatic ties than you can manage, as we'll see on the diplomacy screen, right here, it tells us we have 0 of 4 diplomatic relations. So if we have 5 of 4, 1 extra than we can theoretically manage, then although we have 3, we're going to lose not just 1 from national focus, but another 1 from having too many ties. So these kinds of things are things that can detract on the larger number you have. And obviously you want to have more of these because they allow you to build things, to perform all kinds of actions in the game that you require this kind of abstract power to perform. Another way to affect these things is to hire advisors in the various areas. So you can have administrative, diplomatic, and military advisors. If you click on the diplomatic advisor, you can see we have the 3 different grades of advisor. You can have one that adds 1, one that adds 2, or one that adds 3. Adding 3 is obviously hugely valuable. Therefore, they cost 144 gold outright to hire. That's just the hiring fee, and they cost 9 gold monthly to maintain. We only make 14 gold monthly, and most countries don't even make that this early on. So hiring like a +3 advisor is a huge financial burden, but they obviously are quite literally worth their weight in gold. They're going to add 3 to administrative power. That's going to lead to you perhaps leapfrogging some of your neighbors in technology, because one of the things these are most useful for is increasing technology, which we'll see in a little bit. So it might be worth it ultimately, but each one also has a specific effect, a modifier that they provide for your country. So this particular person, Pedro, will decrease stability cost by -10. Stability is something we'll talk about a little later. Garcia will reduce yearly inflation by 0.10, something which is actually quite useful for Spain because owning a gold mine increases your inflation over the year. And Baltazar, will increase the national tax modifier by +5%, which is obviously really great actually, because then that's going to add +5% on what we already make on tax into the coffers. This early on I normally go with just +1s. I can afford +1s everywhere because of how much I'm making, and they only cost 1 gold per month to maintain. So I'd say hire him, spend 16 ducats on him, but we now have him, and we're now up to 4 because he's adding another one, and we have the national tax modifier, which is adding to the amount of gold that we're making monthly, although obviously we're also looting 1 gold monthly, so that doesn't quite outweigh his cost, I imagine, but we can look at that when we get to the economy screen. So hopefully you understand some more about this page now. We're going to move on. Sorry, one thing I neglected to explain actually is you can sometimes change government form over here. It costs 100 administrative power, and you need to unlock these various different types of government through technological advances. I don't think you can ever change the broad kind of government you are, so I don't think you can ever change from monarchy to, say, republican. At least very rarely. There are some preset events that sometimes let you do that, but very rarely does it actually happen. Right, diplomacy. It tells you what kind of faith you have, and that we were a feudal monarchy, and our technological group. Western is the best technological group in the game, and so it reflects the the normal costs of things. And then technological groups other than Western always have increased technological costs, calculated at, say, for Eastern, I think plus 140%. I don't think it says right here, but so it costs almost 20. It's either like 20 or 40% more than what Western technologies would cost. Going all the way to, if you go to some Native Americans, then they cost 250%. So like 1.5 again the normal cost of what this is to get that technology. So they advance incredibly slowly compared to Western technology countries. We then have the primary culture group, and it tells you what other kinds of cultures are part of your group and what cultures you also accept. Your stability is this thing over here, is that handy way of checking it without going to the screen. Stability reflects basically how stable your nation is. The more stability you have, the more tax you make, the more men you have at your disposal, and the less stability, the less tax, the less men, and the more likely you are to rebellion because your country is seen as very unstable. So stability is always something you want more of. Tells you your various technological levels, your amount of prestige. Prestige is gained through winning battles, through doing impressive things diplomatically, and as a way of reflecting how impressive you are to the various other players in the game. A high prestige is actually going to make it more likely that your diplomatic kind of advances are going to be accepted because they're going to see you as kind of an honourable and impressive person. The less prestige you have, the more difficult it is, and the harder it will be to marry into things like royal families and other stuff like that. Each nation also has a set of ideas, which we'll look at when we come to ideas after technology. Excuse me. And Spanish ideas have particular effects upon the nation of Spain. This tells you your spy efficacy. We currently don't have any spies, as far as I understand. Spies are something that you get from a particular technological group. And we have no active policies. Policies are things that will affect how the nation interacts overall. Coming back to this side, it tells you the question mark means that it's a human player. If it's an AI player, then there is no... It'll tell you a personality type more than likely. It tells you who the person is, their particular skills. Again, we have the air, how strong they are. We have the number of diplomatic relations, which, as I explained earlier, is the limits of diplomatic relations you can have with other people. Diplomatic relations are things like allied with, providing a defensive pact, or things like that. So whenever you click on another nation, you can click on their shield, and then over here we have the diplomatic panel. Sometimes this panel isn't here, and this confused me initially, because you get this panel instead, and you're always like, oh god, how do I get back to the other panel? Because it just you're looking at your country through the diplomatic lens, as it were, and it's confusing as to how you get back to that panel. It's simple, just close, go back to Portugal, click Portugal, shield, and then you're back here. Don't worry if you click that. Similar thing with show opinions, that brings up this thing. Just click show diplomatic actions again. So I'll get back between the two. So in the big red button we have declare war, which you can obviously do if you want to declare war. You do need a reason to declare war, so if I click it now, we're not going to declare war. You can see that we have no casus bellis, the Latin term, cause for war. No casus bellis is immediate. If you declare war with no casus bellis, casus belli even, doesn't want to bring it up. One of the things it's going to do, it says over here, is immediately you're going to lose two stability, because your nation is going to be upset that you went to war for no good reason. It'll increase your war exhaustion immediately by 2, and it's just, in general, like, it upsets people. Sometimes there's a good reason if you want to upset a whole bunch of people to declare war with no casus belli, but in general you want to have a good cause. Part of how you get to that cause is through either them insulting you, so there's an option under under relations, to send an insult, or to improve relations, which will increase this number here, tell you how much they like you. You can offer an alliance or form a coalition against them if other people are kind of if they've garnered enough kind of hate from the community that you can do so, or support their independence if they're currently under some kind of if they're currently a vassal or something like that. Under influence, you can enforce peace, so this is very, very difficult. It has to be done very soon after they've declared war, and you have to have a good relationship with both partners in the war. You can establish a protectorate, but only with lesser technological groups. Same thing with the Crest Protectorate. You can offer vassalization, but you must have, as it says, they must have a lower base tax than you by quite a lot. And you have to have 190 relation with them, positive, and they must be at peace, and you must have a military alliance already. Guarantees their independence, kind of self-explanatory, but this is also a kind of relation that you can have, and you can send a warning to. So I'm just going to finish going through these, kind of. Improve relation, self-explanatory, send insult, decreases the relation. Offering a royal marriage obviously links their crown in with yours, and is more likely to yield you an heir, because there's obviously kind of marriages going on, people having kids and stuff like that. Fabricating a claim is the easiest way to get a casus belli, because you're just simply claiming that they own a territory that rightfully belongs to you. You can only fabricate claims, you'll note, along countries that you share a border with. So I couldn't fabricate a claim, say, on Lisboa, because I share no border with Lisboa, nor on Coimbra. Oh, actually, I can do it on Coimbra. Maybe because I share a sea zone with them. But Lisboa is a capital. It's always harder to fabricate a claim on capitals anyway. But generally, it's only with countries that you share a border with, or perhaps a sea zone. You can justify a trade conflict if they threaten your trade, and that allows you to kind of go to war with trade conflict as a reason, and that has particular bonuses and negative effects for the certain kinds of things you want to do in the war. So discontent, sabotage, reputation, infiltrate, administration are all things that you require, I think, like the subterfuge idea group to do. So they'll normally remain grayed out for most of the game. And you can support rebels in a country, which is you feed money to rebels in a particular province, makes it more likely that they're going to break out. And if they take over the country, then they become friendly to you because you supported them when they were rebels. Within of economy actions, you can transfer trade power. They'll probably not accept. Why will they not accept? If there's ever a cross or a tick, it'll tell you exactly why they will or won't do something. Yeah, so they're just wary of receiving trade power from someone they're not allied to, and someone who has a base tax similar to them, I think. You can issue an embargo, which is something that's useful. Usually you can do with rivals to harm their trade power in particular nodes. You can send a gift to increase their how much they like you. You can offer them a loan, give them subsidies, which are specifically to do with a war. You can sell them a province or even sell them ships. So those are all economy actions. Then access, finally, is you can ask or offer for fleet or military access. So military access allows you to move troops through borders. Fleet basing means you can land ships in their harbours and have them repair and just kind of have safe harbour there. So let's say that I want to be friends with Portugal because they're quite close to me and kind of we should be natural allies. So I click offer alliance. There's a 101. Sorry. Well, yeah. I mean, there's just a 99% chance I'll say yes, but essentially they're going to say yes. As long as it's over this board, even if it's by a little bit, they'll say yes. That's kind of how it works. We send. The diplomat is, you can see, it just flashed. He's gone off there. In a couple of days, they'll report back to us whether or not we have an alliance or not. We were on the diplomacy page. We go back to our country. Right. That's what a diplomat. So when we have that alliance, the numbers on the left are going to go up by 1. Diplomatic reputation is influenced by your legitimacy. Legitimacy is over here. We have 100 out of 100. It goes down when we marry into another family. That'll go down by a certain amount depending on their prestige. Normally between 2 and 5, which isn't too bad, and it recovers at a rate of 0.09 per year. So it'll take a little bit, but it'll recover. You have to worry when it gets down below about 40. Then it starts becoming like you could have rebellions because your crown isn't viewed as a legitimate crown. And that affects your diplomatic reputation. So if you have less legitimacy, then people are less willing to do deals with you. And finally, we have improved relations. Being at peace and having a certain amount of prestige simply just radiates a kind of pleasant aura around you, I guess. People are just less likely to. People are more likely to have better relations with you because they'll view you as a positive force, I guess. Finally, onto enemies. This tells you your list of any kinds of active alliances, wars, embargoes, all that kind of stuff is going to be reflected here. So right now we have a truce with Granada because historically, even though this didn't happen in the scope of the game, it happened before the game technically started, we were at war with them a while ago, and that truce expires on January 1448. It's never a good idea to break truces. Almost never a good idea to break truces, because that inflicts huge stains upon your reputation and stuff. So generally, we'll wait until January 1448 before we will attack. But we also have the reconquest against them, because they hold they hold provinces that are rightfully supposed to be ours. So that's what these things are. Now, rivals are people you declare, and they're very hard to remove from the list after you've declared them. But against it, so they're kind of like people that you're always going to kind of be jockeying against for better position. Rivals are almost always kind of near to you. Having a rival means that you get plus 25 prestige from beating them in battles. You get no trade efficiency penalty when embargoing. If you embargo a non-rival, you do suffer a trade efficiency penalty, because you're going out of your way to do it. You get plus 20 spy offensive against them, which means that it's easier for you to fabricate claims of their territory. And you get minus 33 diplomatic power cost for demanding provinces from them in a peace deal. So everything is cheaper to demand from them because they're historically your rival. It gives you a list of the only rivals we can make. Since we're just sent an envoy to Portugal, we're probably not going to want to get on their nerves. Aragon is I always think is a good choice for rival, because you want to form the nation of Spain, you're going to have to get Valencia, Barcelona, and I think Alicante. So you're going to have to essentially kick Aragon out of Spain, out of the Iberian Peninsula. So I like having them as a rival at some point. England's quite far away, so they're quite good to have as a rival, because they kind of can't do that much against you. France being on your border and all, I think France, especially since normally France becomes quite powerful in the game, they can, once they've turned all their vassals into just their own sovereign territory, they become quite big. Morocco, I think, is also a good one to have as a rival, because Portugal's probably going to be kind of beefing with them, and you can get involved and take over some of their territory, and then maybe take over some stuff from Tlemcen as well. So that's kind of the rival stuff done. You want to have so these are all notifications that you have to deal with. The first one you always see is too few rivals. You want to fill these shields as far as possible, because that helps you with this thing called power projection. Power projection is simply a way of counting kind of like how powerful you are, in terms of like how many people you're kind of out there kind of fighting with. The bigger you are, the more rivals you can have, and the larger your power projection can be. So currently we lose -1, we lose -2 yearly from not having enough rivals. So if we were to have 2 rivals, we'd remain stable at 0. Having more than 2, so having 3, will allow us to get +1 yearly. After 25 years, because we'll get 25 power, the power projection will allow us 1 military leader without upkeep. So normally every month you have to pay a certain amount of upkeep for military leaders. Having 1 without upkeep is good. And after 50, you get an extra +1 of each kind of power. So that's after 50 years of having a certain amount of rivals. So power projection is something you definitely want to aim for, aside from the innate benefits of having certain rivals. So always declare as many rivals as you can. Sometimes it's worth waiting a little bit to see who the computer is going to declare as a rival. What's a good example of this? So particularly in, like, if you're playing one of the German states, the political landscape can shift so much. You need to kind of see where people are going to fall. There's no point rivaling someone who you could have made an ally when the other person you were planning to make your ally decided to rival you anyway, and then you're stuck with 2 rivals and not very many allies. Sometimes it's worth waiting to see what the computer will do before you decide to make your rivals. You can't revoke rivals for 25 years, I think, so you need to kind of be fairly sure before you do that. Moving on to this side, we have ways of sorting out this list. So neighbours tells us those near to us, enemies tells us those we're enemies with, friends don't have any right now. And then finally we have create subjects, which is a way of creating vassals without taking territory from other people. I'm not entirely sure why you'd ever want to do this. Perhaps, I don't know, you just like the idea of having a vassal, or perhaps you want to create a barrier between you and some other people. I don't know. I can't really think of why. Generally, I aim for more hegemony and less kind of being broken up. Or perhaps, I guess a viable reason would be if people in Lyon got upset, and they had a really high level of autonomy anyway, and they were just looking likely to rebel constantly, and it was going to take a while to kind of quell them, and you were dealing with several other wars at the time. It might be easier to just release them as a vassal and try and maybe get them back later. So that's one thing you can do at this page. Moving on. I'm going to kind of try and speed through economy. This is a way of telling about the number of money you get with the total expenses that you have. Obviously the total income has the expenses subtracted, and that leaves you with your balance every month. As you can see, we have plus 5% from our advisor onto taxation, and this breaks down the amount of taxation that we're getting. Production is similarly the amount of gold we make from things we produce within our countries. On any province you click on, you can see what it produces at the bottom: grain, wool, cloth, more cloth, naval supplies, grapes, wine, lots of wool, gold, iron, even more grain, wool, grain, salt, fish. Yeah, and then it tells you also the current prices of each of those things, and they change depending upon the world market and stuff like that. So that's production, that's what you get from there. Trade is again a different sphere of how you earn money, and that depends upon trade nodes and stuff like that. So if we go back to the trade map mode, then we can see at Sevilla, if we click on it, yay, pie charts. The amount, 100% of the value that comes into Sevilla is retained, simply because none of it is leaving. Portugal has 47% of the power, we have 39% of the power. So with our 39% of power, we generate 3.7 gold, and out of this an income of 4.7 is made for the state. And that's from technology and from Portugal simply has more because they have better traditions in this particular area. Light ships in the area affect this amount, as do the amount of provinces we have in the particular node. Trade power, which is measured from just from prestige, from trade efficiency, from transfers from various places, which yields you, all of this yields you your current trade power, which directly affects the amount of money you can make. So that's where all the trade kind of stuff comes from. You just kind of have to play around with the trade node, trade stuff to kind of make it make sense. I might have to do a separate stuff to explain more about the trade. And then gold, simply from having a gold mine, we get a certain amount of gold per turn, but this also increases inflation, as you can see, by 0.06% a year. That means that cumulatively things are going to be becoming more expensive until we can research a kind of anything that decreases inflation. So buildings is just slowly going to be costing more. But I mean, 3 gold a turn is quite a lot, so it's worth it for a while at least. And you can always expend a certain amount of administrative power to just reduce reduction by a flat out 2%. Tariffs are something that you only make on production from colonies, so things that aren't on mainland Europe, or Africa generally, or at least Northern Africa generally. So they're not something you have to worry about until later on in the game, but they worked out much the same way as production. And then finally we have vassals, in which we have a 40% increase because of feudal monarchy, legitimacy, and the base value. But we don't have any vassals, so we don't make anything from that. Harbour fees are stuff we make from people paying to use our harbours. Subsidies are, like we saw in the diplomatic stuff, diplomatic actions, things that we have from people paying us for having declared war, stuff like that. Spoils of war is just how much we receive from being in war, and war reparations are, specifically what is being repaid to us from having been in a war with someone. Generally the loser pays reparations. Expenses is all kind of the same. We have one advisor, he cost us 1 gold. Now the sliders are important. Colonial and missionary maintenance normally don't become important until later on, but army and fleet maintenance are something that are always going to be important. What they represent is how much money is going to the army out of all the money that you have. And the less money that you invest in the army, obviously you gain more balance, as you can see. But one of the things that means is, if we go back to the regular map mode, you can see that now this bar next to the troops is yellow. when normally, as you can see here, it should be green. If it's full out green, that means they have a very high morale, of the highest they can have, because they're completely equipped and supplied. Doing it like this, we obviously gain a lot more money in the short term. We're paying the bare minimum to maintain our soldiers, but if we were to ever go to war, they were going to perform very badly, because morale directly affects how well that an army will perform in a battle. Starting it back up again, we can see that it hasn't gone down by too much, but it's still gone down a little bit. It's not completely full compared to other units. I think normally after a day or something has passed, it's kind of trashed, and it takes months, at least 3 months normally, to get back to full morale. So maintenance is something that if you're in a razor-thin margin, sometimes it's worth having lower a little bit to gain more money, but it's something you always need to keep an eye on, especially if there's a battle coming up, because it's going to take months to get the maintenance back up, to get the morale back up. Fleet maintenance is something that you probably never want to decrease normally, because that affects your light ships, and light ships affect how much money you get. So I almost never reduce fleet maintenance, because they make you money very directly. All of this gives us our balance. You can always take loans, but you pay loans back at a 4% interest per annum. And loans are in general not a good idea. If you need a particular boost to hire mercenaries to get involved in the war, obviously it makes sense to spend more money now to get to get more money in the long term from more territories and stuff like that. But you have to be wary. It can often lead to a kind of endless cycle. I remember once I mistimed when I decided to embrace the Reformation in England and embrace Protestantism. And you get a certain amount of gold to kind of stand out the couple of months it'll take of suppressing rebellions. But it ended up taking a couple of years, and I think at like the deepest point I was like 30 loans in debt, and it just took many years to get back out on top of that, just because it was incredibly taxing in the literal sense. So loans are something you need to keep an eye on. You can always raise war taxes as well, which cost a certain amount of military power, but decreases the modifiers on of maintenance on your troops and navies. So obviously cost you less gold in the short term. Right, I'm going to take a little break here and have a drink of water. So, that is the economy done. Trade is obviously a way of breaking down the way that all the trade nodes work. Now, trading, you have two merchants. Merchants can be sent to places to forward their trade power, so we currently have one at Genoa and one at Safi, I think, who push the trade power towards these particular nodes, which give us more power to make more money. This tells us how much of your income comes from trade, what your embargoes on others and on you. These are all various things that affect the way trade works. So your efficiency is just measured based on your technology. Range is simply how far away what kind of nodes you can affect, given how far away they are from you. That increases with technology too. Steering is directly affected by navy tradition, so depending on how kind of savvy your navy is with various things, it'll affect how good you are at steering trade from places. Steering is to do with sending fleets. Income is just how much you will make from trade depending on your technology group. Mercantilism is something that you get to increase depending upon certain events. Higher mercantilism just leads to better trade. Privateer efficiency is how good your pirates will be when you send navies on kind of privateering missions. Excuse me. Inland bonus is how good you are at sending caravans to nodes instead of ships. And goods produced in envoy travel time. I'm not entirely sure what affects these. Sorry. I guess they'll come in later in the game, perhaps. ways to affect those. And then these are just breakdowns of the various trade nodes you can use and have. Again, I just encourage you to kind of experiment. There probably isn't enough time to explain how all of this properly works. Technology, we've already talked a little bit about technology. You buy it with the various powers, and it unlocks for you various kinds of things. So at National Ideas, the next step up, we get the ability to use ideas, which we'll talk about directly after this. It also improves things like production efficiency and administrative efficiency at various levels. So you don't get administrative efficiency increases until level 22, but production we get we have one at level 3, we get another 10% at level 6, going up all the way. And we get another groups of ideas, so we get one at level 4, which we're getting, and then another at 7, so on, so on. Same goes for diplomatic for all of this stuff. These, and then the only difference here is where feudal monarchy unlocks you. We get various different kinds of monarchies we can be later on. These yield us different kinds of units we can use. So we get a different kind of ship, I think at level 11, and then we get new military units, I think at level 7 or 8. And then in much of the same way here, we get increases to trade efficiency, naval maintenance, naval morale, trade range, colonial range, and global settlers. These are all through colonialization. And we have the same thing for the military stuff over here. These are all things that affect the way you fight. And then we also get an armory, which we'll get at 4, and we get docks and marketplaces at 4 for the diplomatic. So that's technology. Ideas. So these are the national ideas we have of Spain. So we get the Reconquista, which gives you +5 discipline for all your armies. Discipline is a positive modifier for your forces and are going to make them more effective. Then we get the Spanish Inquisition, which no one expected, which gives you +2 missionary strength, which is obviously enough to counter the negative one that we got from Sunnism, which is quite useful. You get the Inter Terra, which gives you an extra colonist. We get Devout Catholicism, which gives you +2 yearly papal influence. You get Treasure Fleet, which gives you better provincial tax modifier, blah blah blah. You can read the rest. And each nation has its own specific set of national ideas. In general, we get 1 extra missionary, and we get extra morale of armies by +15, which is very useful. Now, these specific ideas we unlock at particular stages, and you have to spend up to 300 or 400. I think it's like 400 maybe. Between the two, sorry, I can't remember exactly what the number is now, to buy each one of these ideas. But the only way that you increase Spanish ideas is by buying particular ones of these ideas. So I think every 2 or 3 you will yield you a new Spanish idea. After you've exhausted Spanish ideas, you stop getting any extra ideas on top of these ones. But each one of these yields you a similar bonus to the way Spanish ideas work. So if we take, say, expansion ideas, then the first one will give us an additional colonist, which we don't have any right now, so that'd be useful. The next gives you an additional merchant, the next gives you faster colonies, the next gives you better recruitment time, the next gives you another diplomat, the next gives you better shipyards, and then the last gives you 20% trade power. And then for completing the whole thing, you get a permanent casus belli against less advanced non-pagan nations in Asia and Africa. These also work with each other in interesting ways. So having exploration with expansion, as you can see, it tells you how they would interact. So, exploration with expansion gives you a colonial expansion, which gives you +20% global settler increase. So it's worth thinking about how you're going to want to put these together to yield you the kind of. So if you're interested in colonialization, you're going to want exploration and expansion, and maybe things like maritime ideas. I don't know. It's for you to think about, but that's where ideas come into play. You always need to choose one mission to have going at a particular time. You get a choice of 3, and they yield you certain rewards. 1 stability, 10 prestige, and 25 diplomatic power, 15 army tradition, and 4 war exhaustion. Prestige is obviously a very useful one to get. Prestige normally costs about 170 administrative power to buy, so just getting one was quite great. But obviously having a prestige of at least 50 it will take a while. Prestige is gained quite slowly through battles and stuff, so that's quite a long-term one. Form an alliance with Aragon will be quite easy because you just have to send it off. Finish the Reconquista, just take Granada. Again, won't take all that long, you have to wait another year at least. You get policies. You can add policies by getting idea groups, and they can kind of inform the way that your country runs. And then lastly, you get national decisions. These will become available when certain prerequisites have been met. So, for instance, when you have Initiative Technology 10, you can pass the Indulgence Act, the Declaration of Indulgence Act, which gives you +5 stability modifier, but +1 tolerance of heretics. So they're almost always like trade-offs, except this one, which just gives you +1 military strength, which is great. And they last until the 2nd of January 1821, i.e. till the end of the game, so they are useful. The ones in green are the ones that are kind of like very big, like forming Spain. So right now we're Castile, but if we were to have a core in Barcelona, a core in Aragon, a core in Valencia, a core in Granada, and so basically Granada does not exist, or at least doesn't own any territory within the Spanish peninsula. If all of those are met, and we are Administrative Tech 10, we can form Spain, which is obviously very useful. It gives you a permanent, so like if we were to just own those particular things, then it gives you a kind of a casus belli on any part of Spain that you don't currently own. And also it's just kind of cool to have a Spanish flag and stuff. So that's missions and decisions. Stability and expansion. War exhaustion. The more war exhaustion you get, which is just from losing battles in general and kind of having your arse handed to you, though you get a little bit from just being in war in general, will lead to more unrest in the country and for the civilian population demanding for an end to the war. So those are... It's quite bad. You want to have it as low as possible. Stability, as you can see, is the scale from +3 to -3. You can always boost it by spending... we need 100 only. But the cost will go up depending on various other things. And the cost goes up incrementally the higher you get. So from 2 to 3 is going to be the most expensive. And something from -3 to -2 will be the least expensive. I've already talked about why stability is good. And if you highlight anything in the game, it'll tell you why it is always good. Expansion, as the expansion part of stability and expansion, tells you the various things about your colonial range. So how easy it is for you to establish colonies. Until that gets to about 300-400, it's difficult to move out of Europe because America is quite far away, or even Africa can be quite far away. Over extension, we've already talked about. This is one of the ways you can get to manage it. There are, I think, 3 kinds of disasters, but not all of them apply all the time to various nations. This tells you whether you've fulfilled the various prerequisites to have disasters start ticking down. Once they start ticking down, you can always stop them by falling out of the particular area. So for the Peasants' War to start ticking down to actually happening, you need to be at peace, you need to have no current other disasters, your manpower needs to be less than 25%, we'll talk about manpower in a bit, and your stability has to be less than 0. So because we haven't fulfilled the last 2, we're not ticking down towards the Peasants' War, but you'll be able to see when we are that there's a progress bar to it happening. Once it happens, there's going to be a huge, goddamn, enormous peasant rebellion all over the place, and it's going to suck. So avoid disasters at all costs. And here is where it tells us the amount of national unrest we have, which is at a base of about -3, which is good, I think. And the number of rebels we have, and it will give you options for dealing with rebels when it comes up. So this is the tab you come to check on rebels and stuff like that. Religion. We are Catholic. You can sometimes convert as soon as Protestantism has happened, and then eventually there'll be other kind of Christian faiths. I don't think you can ever convert to stuff like Islam, but that's how that is. Tolerance of the true faith means that you have +1 tolerance for other Catholics, but -1 tolerance for anyone who isn't a Catholic, i.e. a heretic. These are the tolerances for the various kinds of other religions. We only have -2 for Eastern Orthodox and -2 for Islam. I think. Yeah, it just kind of throws in a bunch of things under the same kind of the symbol of Islam. So we not only have Sunni and Shia Ibadi, but Buddhist, Confucian, Shinto, Hindu, animists, all those other kinds of things. We have one cardinal currently. They revamped the way that the papal influence thing worked a while ago. I still haven't got exactly my head around it. The idea is that you get a certain amount of papal influence every year. Each year we get 1.12. Now you can use influence either to essentially gamble on getting another cardinal, which will increase the amount of influence you have, or you can simply save up and use it to buy one of these nice perks. I think that's how it works now. So once you get 5, you can get 10 invested influence towards becoming the next controller. Now, obviously, if you were the only one spending, then that would yield exactly 100% chance of becoming the next papal controller. But say I invested 5 and got 10, and Aragon invested 5 and got 10, then we'd have 50-50 shot. So that when the next position for a cardinal becomes available, it'll go to either one of us on a 50-50 split. The more people involved, the less chances you become, although obviously you can keep investing more to up your chances. So it's kind of a gambling game, as it always is with Catholicism. So yeah, that's how that kind of works in a nutshell. That you can get from the papacy view, or there's an option down here. Same thing. Religious unity tells you you'll have any provinces that aren't Catholic will be displayed here, and you'll have the option to send missionaries or not. For 500 gold, you become Defender of the Faith, which gives you an extra missionary, more morale, less war exhaustion, more prestige. So it's a good thing. It's quite expensive. Now we have the military tab. This tells you the kinds of units you have, how much they cost, their various effectiveness, the number that you have, and if you ever get the chance to upgrade them, you'll be able to do so here. So right now we have the option between Latin Medieval and Halberd. Latin Medieval have better defensive morale, but Halberd have better offensive shock. So it kind of depends upon whether you're going to be attacking or not as to whether or not you want Latin or Halberd. If you go for Halberd, it's going to mean that, as you can see, these all go down to red because they're being replaced with the various right troops and being refitted, so they have to build their morale all the way back up, essentially from having to retrain certain troops. So that's how that tends to happen. You can now replace ships as well, but you don't have to do it from here. You have to land a ship back in a harbour, and you get the option to refit it with the current specs of how a ship is. So that's how that works. This again tells you all the various things about the ships. Here you get the breakdown of your force line limit and your tradition and morale for both things. You get military tactics, which goes up with military tech, increases the amount of the damage you can do. Discipline, defensive,ness, siege ability, all of this kind of goes up with tech and stuff like that. And you also get a breakdown of your leaders here. You 1 out of 1 means you can get one leader for free. So we don't pay any monthly cost for this person. If he were to die, we would have to pay an initial hiring fee for a new leader, but again, we wouldn't pay a monthly cost for him. And the pips tell you how good he is. So he provides +2 to fire, +2 to shock, +3 to maneuver, so how fast he can move, and none to siege. At their best, I think you can get, 4 is very good. I think you can get 5 on leaders, but yeah, you have a random chance of putting a good or a bad leader, kind of depends. You can always make your general or your air leaders. They don't cost you anything to make or to have, but obviously you run the risk of them dying in battle, which isn't always great. Lastly, we have subjects, which we can't get to right now because we have no subjects, but from here you can manage your subjects, and the same you can manage all the other stuff. Phew. That is the biggest part of explaining. After this, it's just going to be kind of like little things. So let me just go through the rest of it quickly. We've already talked about power. That should all make sense. These are the notification bar. It tells you have no mission, that there is disputed succession in various places, that truces will expire, and that you have free advisor slots. You can deal with any of that by clicking on it. It comes up and you can deal with it. If you don't want to kind of look at it right now because you don't really care about disputed successions, you right click, it goes away. That's that. Money, you can go to treasury. It tells you stuff about that, but this is a little breakdown up here, so you don't have to click on this to get to know how much you're making, whether you're in debt or not. Manpower. Manpower is important for the army. You have a certain amount of manpower reserve, so these are used to either buy new units at a cost of 1,000 apiece, or if you lose units in battle, manpower is expended sending reinforcement to those units. Manpower recovers incredibly slowly. As you can see, we only gain 258 each month, which means that to get back to 28,550 men, it's going to take us around about 100 months. A couple of years, a long time. Manpower, again, recovers incredibly slowly. So when you get involved in a war, if you lose a whole lot of manpower, if you go down to 0, you need to not be in wars for a while. You need to wait for that to build back up, and you'll often get a mission which encourages you to do so, because it doesn't matter if you have 20,000 troops on the field and the enemy only has 10,000 troops on the field. If you have 20,000 with no reinforcements and they have 10,000 with 30,000 reinforcements, then although you may do well initially, if they just knock out enough of your troops, and they can replenish their army 3 times over. You can't replenish your army at all. You're going to eventually probably lose. You need to think about it like that. So that's why it's always worth counting the enemy's manpower and forces before you go into it, not just checking what they have on the map. But I'll explain to you how to do that in a bit. Stability we've talked about, prestige we've talked about, legitimacy we've talked about, power projection we've talked about. These are the counts of your various units. This is your power we've talked about. Right, here's the date. You get the ability to plus or minus the speed. Speed is counted by pips. It goes from like about 1 day every like second or two to kind of a couple of days a second really quick. If you're just waiting for stuff to happen, then you can make it go quite fast and just kind of sit back. This tells you your position in the game, how well you're doing compared to other people. This little screen here allows you to show you various things. So it's ticked to show almost everything currently. So it shows you what your diplomats are currently doing, what your merchants are currently doing, your armies, where they are, how many are in them, your navies, and any buildings that are going on. Eventually it'll show you colonial activity, where you're colonizing, how it's going, missionary activity, all other kinds of things will be shown here. It's just kind of like a quick check screen. This is the notification bar. You'll get notifications of various things happening here. So if I unpause very briefly, a bunch of notifications ought to pop up soonish. So, well, firstly, yeah, there we go. Portugal accepted our alliance, so it tells us that we are now allied with Portugal. If we to go back to the diplomacy screen, you can see we've gone up to 1 out of 4, and Portugal, they sent us an offer of alliance actually, but we've already sent them one, so that's irrelevant. And here we have a bunch of notifications telling us that various people accepted alliances. Normally you can just see you'll eventually get good enough to just look at the shield and know who that is. So, you know, like Austria and Augsburg, Austria and Alsace, Austria and Trier, and Austria and Brandenburg. And that's Navarra and Aragon. It normally only tells you the ones closest to you, who you might have an interest in. Austria you have an interest in because they're the Holy Roman Empire, which is a whole separate mechanic, which we might talk about a little bit, but probably not that much. Right, so that's the notification bar. Now, in this little thing here, you can see you have a little mini-map. And you saw earlier I clicked here to switch map modes. Map modes are an important part of the game, especially if you're a cartophile, a map lover. We have the main map modes here. So this is the terrain map mode, where you just see the map kind of like a Google Earth kind of view. There's the political map mode, which divides by very nice bright colours most of the time into the various areas and what they are. Just if you want to see for nice easy reference who holds what currently. There's the trade map mode, which we already talked about. The Imperial map mode, which only tells you about the Holy Roman Empire because it's the only empire left. Austria is currently the Holy Roman Emperor. Provinces that are hashed are provinces that are rightfully considered part of the empire but are owned by non-imperial members. So, for instance, Neumark is owned by the Teutonic Order, which is not an imperial member, but is considered an imperial province. So sometimes the emperor will issue warrants to take back these particular places. The empire is complicated, we might not talk about it all that much. The religious map mode, obviously Europe is very, very Catholic right now, and this is very Orthodox, and then there's Sunni and Shia and Coptic over there. It'll eventually get more interesting when Protestantism crops up. Interesting that there's Shamanist around there. So that's that. There's the diplomatic map mode, which is solely relevant to you, done relative to you. So blue is ally, red is enemy, all that other kind of stuff. Now, where it gets interesting, click this little button here. Click it. Oh my god, look at all those map modes. You get a completely disgusting amount of map modes in this game. So we have the opinion map mode, which tells you how people feel about you. So they feel quite well, so they're a slightly brighter shade of yellow. We have the coalition map mode, the region map mode, which tells you the various regions things are in if you're ever interested. You get the culture map mode, which tells you all the various cultures, which is quite useful. We get the unrest map mode, the colonial map mode, the technology map mode, the supply level, yeah, on and on and on. You get a huge amount of map mode. You get the winter map mode. So any kind of information that you like to see expressed this way, always just go to the map mode. It's a great place to do it. Bottom we have the Holy Roman Empire, which we already talked about a little bit. This tells you various things about it. Unless you're in Germany, it's just not going to affect you that much during the game, so just kind of see what happens, learn a bit about it. We've already talked about the papacy, right, and then right at the bottom you have this for the log, which you can pull up here, which tells you various things like this. I normally don't play with it on, but some people find it more useful. Right, you have the menu, which you can always get by pushing escape anyway. That's how that is. Right, the ledger. The ledger is the last kind of very important part of the game. The ledger is your friend. You need the ledger in order to make informed decisions about what you're going to do. So you can go to country. It tells you all of these different little bits and pieces about all the best things in the game. So best leader in the world, all that kind of stuff. Right, we go back to the index. Most important, before you declare war on any given country, say I want to declare war on Granada, as I'm going to want to do very soon, you go to military, you go to armies, you need to look through, this it displays all the information about various things, it's all freely available, you don't have to just kind of eyeball it and try and judge. We know that Granada has 3,000 infantry, 1,000 cavalry, for a total of 4,000. That is their army currently on the field, but they have 10,000 manpower, so they can reinforce that twice and a half over, and they have a force line limit of 6, so they can get 2 more units, possibly, but then obviously that will go down by 2,000. Right, so we know now, given that we have a army of 23,000 on the field, and the ability to just about reinforce that once, that we could probably take them. But it becomes much more important, obviously, later on, as in like the earlier situation I described, where they can reinforce their army 3 times over and stuff like that. So that's why the ledger is really important. Any other information that you could possibly think of, it's here. You just need to go and look at it and make decisions based upon that information. So the ledger is very important. The ledger is your friend. There's a history, which is just a nice way to kind of review over various things that happen to you. These are the triggered modifiers, which is something they added. These are just various other things that could happen depending upon how many things that you fulfill. Yeah, so you can kind of explore those at your own leisure. And then if you're ever wondering, like if something comes up and says, oh, there's a unrest in this particular province, and you're like, where the goddamn hell is that? Right over here, the little arrow, find province. Say, ooh, I misspelled it. God damn it. Alicante. Centers you in right on it. Okay. So, we've run in a little bit over an hour, but obviously it's a huge amount of information to get through. I hope you found this a little bit helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to just post them. I'll do my best to answer them. I have been playing this a while, so I know a little bit about what happens. I can't probably explain everything, but I'll certainly be willing to try. If you like this, if you want like explanations of other things, I can freely do so. Just let me know in the comments. Yeah, I hope you found this helpful. Obviously, it was a bit quick. Feel free to go back over any parts, or if you just don't understand the way I laid it out, please just let me know. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope this taught you a little something about the game. Those first few playthroughs are difficult, but just make mistakes, just learn the game. It's incredibly rewarding. It's incredibly interesting. If you don't have the game and you just want to see how it gets, this probably doesn't lay out exactly how exciting it can be. It probably looked a bit like trying to teach someone Excel, but don't go on this. Like, look at some other people actually playing the game. Judge on that, not on this, because this is just an explanation of how to play the game. Actually playing the game is very, very interesting. Please get Europa Universalis. It's a fantastic game. Paradox, a fantastic company. And that's kind of it for my cheerleading. I hope you enjoyed this. I really hope you do. Again, let me know if you have any more questions, and thanks for watching. I'll see you out there. Okay, bye.